Here we are in chapter 3, and the couple of verses I want to talk about now involve a play on words, harum and haram. Verse 1 goes, "Now the serpent was more crafty than any other wild animal that the Lord God had made, or Yahweh had made. Elohim Yahweh had made." And the next verse is verse 7. "Then the eyes of both were opened, and they knew that they were naked. And they sewed fig leaves together and made loincloths for themselves." So they're ashamed at their nakedness now. And there is a play on words. Crafty is haram, and naked is haram. So there's a little play on words there. Now, who is this serpent or snake? It's just a talking snake. So this talking snake has intelligence, um, and it is not Satan or the devil here in this text. It's just a talking animal. And this idea of a trickster animal, a trickster snake, is a common element, a familiar element in Mesopotamia. So this would be nothing new or strange. It's a literary device. So you have this trickster, which is a being who leads astray or sometimes is a helper. This is a common in many different myths from many different cultures. But here, the snake is just a talking snake. And you could say, well, here's an example of the Bible not being scientifically accurate, which is true. But that's sort of a silly thing to say because this is a story. And the talking snake helps the story along by what the snake says. And he is tempting Eve. "You will not die," the snake says, "for God knows that when you eat of it, your eyes will be opened, and you will be like God, knowing good and evil." And knowing good and evil in this case uh, means more knowing everything, knowing the limits of knowledge, everything from good to evil. So it's sort of a temptation to be like God, to have all this knowledge. And so Eve is tempted by this promise. And the promise that your eyes will be open is true because their eyes are opened. They see that they are naked. But the other side, that they will be like God, is false. So this is just a fascinating story at many different levels and many different meanings. And here in just a few verses, we see truths and lies. We see someone tempted to do something they know they shouldn't do. Now, what is God's response to this situation? They've eaten of the tree. So we read in verse 8, "They heard the sound of the Lord God," or Yahweh, walking in the garden at the time of the evening breeze. They hid themselves from the presence of Yahweh. But Yahweh called to the man and said to him, "Where are you?" What does this mean? Where are you? Does God not know? No. Is God not aware? Is God not omniscient? Um, or is this just part of the story, part of the text, and we shouldn't get too bogged down in details? What about the idea of God walking in the garden? Is God literally walking in the garden? I think many modern people would have a way of interpreting this which would say that God is only there metaphorically. This is a metaphor, this is a story. But at least one biblical scholar that I greatly respect says, maybe this concept of Yahweh is really of an embodied God, more like a Greek God who has a physical body, who can move very fast and is very powerful, but has a body and can walk in the garden. So in some sense, this might be taken more literally in ancient times, that this really was a conception of Yahweh as not this omniscient, all-powerful God in heaven, the spirit that's just like a mind, but of an embodied God in the form of a human being, sort of like a superhuman being, physical in this world and can literally walk in the garden. Also, this God, Yahweh, is very close to Adam and Hava and Eve. And so this is a picture of Yahweh as close to humanity, close to human beings. So it's not a distant God, but an approachable God. In verse 12, the man says, trying to explain what's happened, the woman whom you gave to be with me, she gave me fruit from the tree, and I ate. So he's sort of blaming the woman and also blaming Yahweh, blaming God. Look, this woman you gave me tempted me. So passing the buck and blaming God in a very direct sense. So later on, God responds to the serpent and Adam and Eve. Because you have done this, cursed are you among all animals, and among all wild creatures. Upon your belly you shall go, and dust shall you eat all the days of your life. I will put enmity between you and the woman, between your offspring and hers. He will strike at your head, and you will strike at his heel. This has been taken to have a lot of significance for later theology, but basically this is a just so story. Why are snakes like this? Why do snakes crawl on the ground? And there's sort of a, you can think of a sort of reason for that, because there are a lot of animals out there. They all have 2 legs or 4 legs. And I think, why is this weird creature here? Why does he have no legs? So this is sort of an etiological story. Etios from the Greek cause. What are the causes of this? In French, it's a pourquoi story, a why story, or a just so story. So this sort of explains some aspects of the world, and this is common in mythology. And this is not making any big theological point. This is just a talking snake. This is why snakes are this way. It's not a serpent. It's not Satan. It's not the devil, which many of us would assume because of later tradition. Now, to the woman, she will have pain in birth, and man will have to toil in the ground. So these are also ideological stories, just so stories. Why is human childbirth so painful? Why do we have to labor so hard to produce food? And in most societies, 90 to 95% of the human labor is towards the procurement of food. And so this is why it is so important. For most peoples, this would be understandable. Why do we have to toil so hard? And then verse 19, by the sweat of your face you shall eat bread until you return to the ground. For out of it you were taken. You are dust, and to dust you shall return. So that's a very profound statement of human mortality. We come out of the earth. We're creatures of the earth. The Adamah, the earth, out of which Adam is taken. The man then named his wife Eve, Hava, from the Hebrew, very similar to the Hebrew life, because she was the mother of all the living. And there is they were cast out of the garden lest they eat from the tree of life and live forever. There's an angel placed there, and there is a sword. Now, is this sword flaming, or is it literally on fire, or is this a sword that's just glistening in the sunlight because it's made out of steel? Nevertheless, in any case, there's just a sword, and it's spinning, and it guards the way back to the tree of life.